Oh, wrong button. I hit the wrong button, Sean. 5, 4, 3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for February 29th, 2024. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, the only constant in the video game industry is that things always change. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Sean, Turbo Sean McDowell. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm cold. It's very cold, Jeff. I don't like the cold. It was warm here, and then it's cold, and then it's going to be warm over the weekend, too. I don't know what's going on anymore, man.
It's I'm the exact opposite.
A meteor's falling outside. I don't know what the hell's happening.
Yeah, it's all happening. It was, well, not the exact opposite, like everything except for it was warm, and then it got cold, and I was relieved because I prefer the cold. So it was like, okay, we're going back to a little bit of cold weather. Although it was very strange. Yeah, I'm definitely a pervert about it.
Yeah.
It was like shockingly cold though. I was not expecting that.
It was like 2 degrees yesterday.
Yeah,
like Midwest sucks. Don't.
Yeah, so I got the kid off the bus, and that's why we're doing the show late. Steph's out of town, I guess, and so I had to get Addie off the bus. I'm like, I don't want to like stop the show in the middle and go like wake. It's like hers a little bit random. It could get here 11:30, could get here 11:45. So I'm like, we'll just postpone the show. So we're doing the show a little bit late today. If you're watching live. If you're on feeds later, you probably won't even notice. So why did I even bring it up? Who cares? It's hey, games industry, more bad news, and we're gonna get into all of it here in a little bit. But boy, it is a real bummer out there.
Yeah, I'm scrolling down. I didn't look at the rundown yet. Boy, you're in for a doozy today, everyone.
You're in for a doozy. Yeah,
we'll do what we can to get you through this.
Let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help explain what we do here. We'll help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with EA is laying off around 670 people, sunsetting unspecified games. We got a little more specificity there. We'll get into that as well. This comes from George Yang at GameSpot. Electronic Arts has announced that it will be laying off 5% of its staff, or around 670 people. Let's stop there. That is kind of so far, because many of those employees are that they're also going to lay off later are in like the consultation period in other countries where they legally have to do that. And so more will probably be coming after the end of the fiscal year. So around April, May, more people will be joining the 670. It probably will be closer to 8% by the time they're done. And this is on top of them laying off like 6% of their staff last year. The company will also start sunsetting an unspecified number of games and move away from developing certain licensed IP games. EA explained that it does not believe that some future licensed IP would be successful in our changing industry. Sean, the whiplash, man, the absolute whiplash, because it's like these companies. And let's be clear, I was hearing it out of EA. EA is the company that was like, the reason we're investing in Star Wars and Marvel still is because it's really expensive to make our own IP, and it's really risky. So we're going to go out there and license these IP. Months later, they're like, that shit doesn't work. It is, it's rough out there. Okay. 670 people more losing their jobs. This joins a growing number that is fast approaching 10,000 people laid off this year, if it's not already there.
It's not even March yet, Jeff. What the fuck?
It's not. Tomorrow will be March. So yes, we're just 2 months into the year. Yeah, what the fuck? It feels like if you are someone who is trying to get in this industry to make games, I don't know what to tell you. If you're someone who's been in this industry making games, I think we're going to be waiting to hear from a lot of these people, like what it's actually like. But all of them already mostly seem very discouraged. And we'll get into like why this is happening, as we always do when we talk about these stories. But what's your initial reaction?
My initial reaction is this fucking sucks. I saw this, what come in last night, was it, that the news broke? And I just, the first thing I thought to myself, Jeff, was, we have to be running out of companies that can be making cuts at this point, right? Like, surely this will slow down at some point, but it feels like legitimately every other day we hear more and more of these layoff reports happening. It's always a staggering number of people. I hate it.
Yeah, it's I on yesterday's show we talked about the layoffs, and I said I've been hearing that more were coming, and I didn't know who it was. I've heard now these were the layoffs that I was hearing murmurs about. It was coming out of EA, and now what I do hear is, hey, the sources that I've tapped for this sort of information haven't heard about anymore. And then immediately after that, I got a different source is like, yeah, other companies maybe having some problems. So we'll see. It's clearly we're not through it. Clearly there will be more problems going forward. We just talked about how, they're going to get through the consultation period and probably let more people go here at EA. This has led a lot of people to be like, what is happening in the industry? Is this a crash? And I had a thread on Twitter this morning trying to explain, like, let's be clear what's happening. This is not a crash. A crash implies a industry-wide recession. That the industry is making less money than it was making before. People are spending less money on this hobby than they have before, and all indicators suggest that is not happening. If anything, people are spending more money. It's just mostly a shift that these companies were either unprepared for or like misappropriated funds when they were trying to figure out like how to capitalize on it going forward. And they are looking for that quarterly growth. It's like such a frustrating, mundane, boring, and like casually evil answer that's like, oh, these people got laid off because these companies are literally just worried about the very next quarter. They're not worried about long-term growth. They're not worried about keeping the people that make the games happy. It is just this very next quarter that they're worried about, because previous to this, they were getting growth. All these companies were getting growth either by acquiring studios or using borrowing a lot of money for very cheap to make a lot of big bets. And that enabled them to, get some growth here or there. And it's like, okay, we're setting ourselves up for the future. And now all of that stuff has been kind of taken off the table because capital is very expensive. Borrowing money is very expensive. We talk about that a lot. That's still true. It's more true than ever. And these companies are like looking around like, hey, we are not seeing like organic growth from a ton of new people coming into the spaces where we typically sell games. And so how do we get growth? Well, we're going to cut our costs, and we're going to have fewer people that we're going to pay. And that's where the quote unquote growth is going to come from. And when investors see that, they're like, yay, that's great. That's what we like.
They see more green. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that simple and that frustrating. And so like, it's not like, oh, the fewer people are interested in games. That's just not happening. Everything else is working.
It's the opposite.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, there are obviously market shifts. We talk about AAA gaming being unsustainable. That is definitely still true. And yet at the same time, many of these games do come along and sell very, very well. I don't necessarily know what to tell people to be like, oh, hey, this is all sunshine and rainbows. No, that's not what we're saying. It's just not some market force coming down from on high and forcing these companies into this scenario. It is they're doing this to themselves. They are making these decisions and they should own them. It is the executives deciding, hey, we are prioritizing immediate growth because we're worried about what the stock price is going to do next quarter, and that's it. And I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of bad business decisions to me. Namely, you want more stuff out the door. So what are you doing? Firing the people who make the stuff.
Yes. Something I talked about with some sources, and they were like, yeah, we're all worried about this. Though we don't get it. Cutting some of these licensed games at EA, like it's expensive to pay the license. That's one of the things they're trying to avoid here. But having to give a certain percentage to Disney 5 years from now is better than having zero revenue coming in because you don't have a game to put out. And that feels like the situation they're putting themselves in. So I don't get it, Sean.
Yeah, if you're making, I forget which one they would be making, but like an Iron Man game or whatever, everything's already there. You know what that's going to be. And so they don't have to spend that time and money, because time is money in game development. They don't have to spend that on making the original IP. So there's always trade-offs and everything. They're always figuring this stuff out. it's just things just don't add up. And why don't they add up? Because all they're concerned about is, looking better to the shareholders and everything. Like we have, I see you have a quote here from grade A dumbass CEO Andrew Wilson. Jeff, has he announced how he's being affected by this at all?
If he has, he would be saying, I am not affected by this at all. In fact,
I wonder why that is.
Well, I mean, if this affects him, it's only a positive, right? If the stock price goes up, like he gets paid, but usually in stock options, so it's a good thing for him. He's encouraged to do this. I mean,
that's how it is with all this shit. Like you see these layoffs, and it's like, I hate to bring it up almost because it sounds like a broken record at this point, but it really is like the rich getting richer off the backs of the people at the bottom who are just trying their best to make the art that they love. I mean, and it's frustrating.
We've been doing this show a long time, and for now and from the beginning, like you'd be like, I always see comments like, why does capitalism come up on every episode? And it's like, because it defines everything that is happening in this industry. We are working within the confines of that system, and it's going to inevitably lead us to situations like this. And so we bring it up because it's unavoidable. It's in everything. And that makes it, sometimes it's hard to see it, which is why we talk about it. And it's hard to say anything else other than, yeah, here we are yet again, because this industry is it cannot live outside of that system. And it's like, what alternatives are there, Shawn? I mean, I'm like, hey, I love the idea of more public funding for video games.
I mean,
we're not going to get
genuinely,
$500 million games from the U.S. government.
But that's the thing. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe ambition is too high for some of these things. I see some teams flourishing right now, Jeff, and you know who those teams are? Indies.
Yeah.
Indies are doing fantastic right now because smaller team, smaller scope, and they put out something that is smaller in general. And that is the stuff that rises to the top on Steam nowadays and is doing really well. And you get all these gigantic companies trying to chase after that. They spend so much money, so much time trying to recreate some success of either a small game or a flash in the pan like a Fortnite, these bottled lightning moments. You can't artificially create that, and them chasing that and not wanting to take responsibility for their fuck ups is how we end up in these situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think like combining a realistic ambition with robust funding from the public would be a really fun and fantastic alternative, in my opinion. Not a full alternative. It doesn't replace the entire industry, obviously. At least it doesn't seem like it could. But like just starting somewhere, like even like Canada has a pretty decent subsidy program for a lot of games, which is why a lot of games get made in Canada. And it's like, man, it seems like, just about as many games get made in Canada as the United States, and the population difference, the size of the economy there. It's like, that should not be the case. It should be like, oh, America's making much more because there's more people and all this stuff. But it's like, no, Canada funds a lot of that stuff. And a lot of it is AAA games. Many of them are the biggest games in the world. So clearly there is more we could be doing in order to bypass the pitfalls of capitalism. And if this stuff sounds scary to you, I don't care, honestly. Like we are diagnosing a real problem that we see before our very eyes. The benefits of capitalism are supposed to be that people are encouraged to take risks. People are encouraged to take on their own enterprises, because that means more options will be in the market and people have more stuff to choose from, and then they could choose the very best one, and all the money should flow in that direction, and that will encourage even more people to take risks. And we can look on the ground and see that is not happening for a certain subset of video gaming, mostly at the top. And so the system is broken here. Yeah. Let's talk about it. Are there any ways to sort of either deal with it, or do we just we can just let it fail, I suppose, and that's fine too. There's some reasons to suggest that, but people are getting hurt, and it's usually the people at the bottom, not the people at the top. And so there's more problems worth diagnosing and worth figuring out what can we do about that. And yet we just act like it is the course of nature taking its course. Oh, nothing to be done about it. And it's very, very frustrating that we are here constantly right now, and when it feels like, man, we if we just thought about this a little bit more, we could be in better situations. I don't expect better from EA and Microsoft and Sony and all these companies. I really don't. So, but I do think that that doesn't mean there's nothing to be done here. The other side of this with the licensed IP games, The thing I've heard is that EA was very excited about not paying FIFA. They're like, man, that ruled.
I bet.
That look, for $100 million saved is $100 million earned. And now they're like looking around like, we should just do this all over the place. And so that has them reconsidering all these things. Now, we'll talk about one of the games they canceled, but they do have actively in development games. You mentioned like I think Iron Man. I think that's one of them. Black Panther. It's Iron Man and Black Panther. And I think
I'll be honest, I started just losing track of how many there are.
It's all kind of in a
studios.
fog up there. Even though I did some of the reporting on that stuff, it's all fog. And then there's some other Star Wars games, and it's like, man, are these studios concerned about EA losing interest in what they're doing? I mean, they might be contractually obligated, but are they not going to renew that contract even if the game does well because they want to avoid paying the licensing fee to these companies? Seems like that might be the case. And it's got to be so frustrating for these teams because they almost certainly have spent the last couple of years coming up with pitches that involve IP because that's what EA wanted to make. That's what they wanted to hear and wanted to do because they thought that was the less risky option. And now to have that suddenly change overnight and be like, all right, now we want original IPs. It's what we've completely deprecated that side of our business, and now you want to go back to it. How are we even supposed to believe that this is going to last and not change as well?
Yeah.
Right?
Like people are working within these companies are trying to balance this all out because it feels like there's a lot of executives who don't understand game development fundamentally. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but this feels like there's a lot of them making these decisions and they just don't understand. You can't just change, on a whim. And when I say that, it means like even like within a year or so is pretty on a whim for how long it takes to develop a video game. Like I saw, and you retweeted this the other day, it's how I saw it, but Harada was tweeting about, he's been tweeting so much since Tekken 8 comes out because we can't stop that, man. We can't stop Harada from tweeting. But one of the interesting things he tweeted out was how he, as a high-level producer at Bandai Namco, how he is seeing more and more people get into executive positions who aren't like him, who started as coders, as sound designers, etc. And so they don't quite understand that like visions for projects and how it takes a lot of time to build these things up. You can't just like chase the new trend that's happening everywhere. Like I mentioned earlier with like indies and everything like that, which by the way, people point out indies are struggling to find funding sometimes too. That's true.
Yes.
But also you get stuff like, a Balatro where it's like, a person or a couple of people.
There are
That's
breakthrough
the type
games
of thing
happening in indie
about.
gaming all the time. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. The ones that just like a small team makes a small thing and it takes off. Yes. And you can't, these executives are just like, well, we need the success. Where's the success? Let's chase the success. And you can't just immediately drop everything that you're doing, like turn about and then go chase that. You need a longer term plan. And it seems like, to me at least, there's a lot of chasing trends that's happening. And that's why we're ending up in these situations where you had them going, okay, let's go with licensed IP. Oh, the licensed IP thing didn't work. We need a pivot. And then they're looking at the costs and it's like, we didn't put out as many games as we thought we would put out. So where are we going to make cuts? And that's how we end up in this situation.
Yeah. And it's, I think clearly there is a stagnation in the market that's happening in places that is difficult for the industry to deal with. I think there is forecasting looking forward about like, hey, when we look, Matt Piscatella put out that chart of young people not buying as many consoles as Gen Z or Gen X and the millennials did. And it's like, oh man, that's maybe a bad sign if they are less willing to buy into these ecosystems. That means the games that are primarily making their money through those ecosystems might have less of a chance. And that's definitely all probably true. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of money still going into the industry. It is just going into different places. And it's like that has been true of video gaming from the very beginning. When I started up top saying the one constant in games is that it's always changing. It is constantly disrupting itself. And sometimes that is like very violent looking. And it's exacerbated by these companies that have to prioritize their profits, their quarterly growth. And they don't care about any of the other things that are happening here. And it makes it all feel like it's coming tumbling down because they are the primary source of these biggest video games. And it does feel like we are at a point where we need to collectively move past looking to these companies for our entertainment, and it should be like you said, the indie space and a variety of other sources.
All up the stack, looking at more like AA things, looking at the smaller games that even AAA studios are putting out, like just recognizing that a video game does not need to look like The Last of Us. It does not need to look like Gears of War. Like gaming comes in all forms, and like you can just look a little harder and you'll find something you like that you might not have expected. And part of the problem here, you mentioned like the kids not wanting to buy consoles as much nowadays and stuff, because that's where they're at now. They're on their phones, they're on their tablets. Like we've talked about how a lot of people don't realize how big mobile gaming is. Actually stop and think about why mobile gaming would be popular. It's because all these kids got their phones already. So why do they play Fortnite on their phones? Why are they playing Call of Duty Mobile? Like, Jan mentioned that his partner has a friend group where they talked about playing Call of Duty, but they didn't mean on their Xboxes and PlayStations. They meant Call of Duty Mobile on their phones. Why are they doing it? Because that's the system they got. And, I think us in the hardcore gaming crowd are quick to disparage that. But no, that's just a different way of playing. And like we can talk till our lips turn blue about like gacha and how there's predatory stuff and everything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But just the industry is shifting. It's constantly changing, like you said. And I think people just need everyone just needs to think about things a little bit differently. And that's how we get in situations like Xbox and PlayStation. They're not putting out a ton of games right now. Neither of them are. You've been talking a lot about what PlayStation 1. Now what? Fucking I don't know, because like what are you gonna do with this console install base? It's still gonna take you like 6 years to put out a freaking game. So like I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm not claiming to have the answers, but it doesn't mean that I can't look at this and say, well, this isn't the answer, like all of this right now.
Yeah. And it's, I think if we kind of move away from like, okay, well, this isn't, I wouldn't define this as a crash. So what is it? Clearly things are collapsing in some parts of the market. And it's if that's where you go for gaming, that you're going to feel that very deeply. So I understand that. And when you look at like, a couple years from now, like I think we all believe that there will be fewer games from these companies, and that is going to feel very noticeable in a time like we're like really just coming out of like, hey, there used to be an E3 and now there isn't. But when there was an E3, it was like big games announced every summer that would come out that holiday, and it's like that was just a couple of years ago, and now we're in a world where it's like it feels like
it was just a couple of years ago, but maybe it was a little longer since really.
Yeah, really I guess in the grand scheme of the industry, like it's still a couple of years ago. You're right; it's a little bit longer than that. But even like counting Summer Game Fest and all that stuff, there's fewer companies participating in that, but there's still some. But it's like there was a time when it just felt normal for big games get announced, come out that holiday, and that was how it should be and how it will always be. And now we're going to get like a couple years away from this, and we will be in a world where these companies are even more afraid to make new games than they have been already, which was very afraid. And that is going to continue to feel to some people like, hey, something has crashed here. Now, I mean, for me, when people say crash, like I think the 1983 video game market crash, and it's just
the actual crash,
and it's just nowhere near that. No. I mean, if you are losing interest in spending money in video games, like that's going to be today's poll question. Well, like, are you less interested in video games these days? Like, is that really happening? Are you spending more time on other hobbies? My hunch here is broadly, no. I think most people who have been into gaming continue to be in gaming, and they're spending about the same, if not more money than they have been over the last several years. It's just, it is probably going into, and this is the other side, this is a stagnation. Maybe a lot of that money is going into the same games it's been going into since like 2017. Fortnite, Call of Duty, a handful of other things. And that's its own problem to solve, I think. But to me, that goes back to we need alternative forms of funding rather than just relying on the whims of publicly traded companies.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. EA is shuttering Marcus Lehto's Ridgeline Games, with some moving to Ripple Effect to continue work on Battlefield. This comes from Cat Bailey at IGN. EA is shuttering Ridgeline Games with the studio co-founded by former Halo developer Marcus Lehto that was tasked with developing the narrative campaign in the next Battlefield. The closure follows words of Lehto's departure earlier this week and coincides with a broader restructuring announced earlier today that will see EA lay off some 670 employees amid a shift away from future licensed IPs. The work that was begun on the Battlefield single-player campaign will continue. I believe it's moving over to Criterion instead. This is, as we get these layoffs, this is another thing we've seen. More often than not, they also include 1 or 2 studio closures. That's not something we were seeing last year. Last year, we'd go like, we're laying off 5 to 8, 6% people, like in that range. Now this year, it's like, well, we're also laying off 5 to 8% of our workforce, and also we're closing down entire studios. This was a team that did get started relatively recently, and it just feels like one of those things where these companies are like, hey, we're growing. This is where the growth is going to come from. And now we don't think we're growing. So immediately pull the ripcord and get a whole studio out of here. It's frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just ties into everything we were just talking about there. There's a lot of frustration going on. I guess, on the bright side, it looks like Battlefield's potential return might continue.
Yeah.
Because 2042, God, I hate their numbering scheme. That game sucked.
Yeah, I did.
I'm a Battlefield guy. I've been playing them since 1942, back in my crappy old PC back in the day, and that game sucks. So I mean, I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm just trying to find a diamond in the rough somewhere here in all this negative news. So
yeah, I'm curious about Battlefield's future all the time. Where it's like, it felt like 2042 was a misstep out of the gate for me, because I'm like, this is your first Battlefield game that you are releasing into a world that now does have several massive free-to-play shooters that you need to compete with, and you're going to be a $70 game. How is that going to work for you? And it's like, I don't know, even if you were a great game, I think that people would have struggled to get over that hump. Obviously, if it's like a game that people cannot ignore, people will pay the money, they will show up for it. That does happen. But it's like, man, you just do set yourself at a disadvantage if you're not a free-to-play shooter in this day and age.
And even then, people will be critical because, Jeff, we've heard people say, "Oh, Halo Infinite is absolute dog shit," and we're like, "Well, why do you think that? The battle pass is bad." What the fuck are you talking about?
Yes.
So
like,
if that's the problem,
if
that's the problem that games are dealing with these days, be coming in as a $70 multiplayer only game. That was where you started your problems right there, buddy.
Lehto said he's taking time away from games, which is seems to be another thing here that a theme we will get into here in a second with another news story where multiple major game creators are kind of talking in similar ways. The game that was canceled, though, that one of the games that we know was canceled is EA. EA Respawn's Star Wars first-person shooter. The thing that was just in the news a couple of weeks ago. I think you might be able to put 2 and 2 together there about maybe why that was in the news a couple of weeks ago. Maybe someone at that studio was trying to get excitement out there so that EA wouldn't cancel it. This is Andy Robinson of VGC. Electronic Arts has canceled an in-development Star Wars first-person shooter at Respawn, announced in 2022. The first-person shooter game was being helmed by former LucasArts veteran and Medal of Honor co-creator Peter Hirschman, who previously worked on the original Battlefront games, The Force Unleashed, and more. In a statement published on Wednesday alongside the announcement of nearly 700 company-wide layoffs, EA Entertainment president Lauren Mealy said that after a review, it had decided Respawn should focus on the Jedi and Apex Legends series instead. Respawn's unique ability to connect with players and create exceptional game experiences is unrivaled in entertainment. As we've looked at Respawn's portfolio over the last few months, what's clear is the games our players are most excited about are Jedi and Respawn's rich library of owned brands. It's because you fucking haven't let us see the game. I bet we'll be very excited about it then. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about? This sucks. Listen.
This sucks.
I think I'm in a part of the grieving period where I've accepted Titanfall 3 isn't going to happen.
I haven't. I can't believe you took that away from me, Jeff. God,
most people haven't. I get it. Man, I saw some cool shit about that game. It is. I was like, what made it easier is, okay, maybe they could take some of that energy into this project. Right. And we could see some of that stuff manifested here. Even that last round of rumors, Tom over at Insider Gaming was reported about it again. That got me thinking about it again. It's like, hey, they were talking about making stuff that felt like Hades in Titanfall 3. I hope that comes over here where they're trying to make this high octane shooter in Star Wars where you maybe play as a Mandalorian or something like that.
Which is
with a
what
jetpack.
Respawn's good at.
But they're good at, and it all makes sense. So like, let's get that going. And it's not like that was the road they were going down. And, you know, there's little tidbits here and there from people who worked on the game, and they're really bummed. They really like this game. They were really excited for people to see it. They like that's the thing I keep hearing. And it's like, they believed in what they were making because they were playing it and they thought it was very good. And it's like, why are we in a world where the people making the game, especially at a studio like Respawn that knows how to make a fucking game, why aren't they getting the chance to see this through? I know it's 2 years out. I know it's a lot of money. I know you got to give a lot of money to Disney at the end, but you still get some money. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it, Sean.
But also, like, I don't know. Something's not coming together to me because, Jedi, Apex,
right.
Like, throw them a bone. Like, you know that they got the goods.
Yeah.
Like, at a certain point, you need to do things like this. You need to let the company have a passion project and let them just put out, something that feels cool. And I don't think that's what this game really even is. Because like a Star Wars game that like is going to, you talk about like the gifable moments in games and like how you need to sell a game on social media and on TikTok and shorts and stuff like that. If this game is that and it's Star Wars, people will have been like, what's that clone trooper doing, yo? Like, that is the kind of thing that would have been popping off on the internet. So just so much of this doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, there is still that. I can't remember the name of the director of Titanfall 1 offhand, but he's still, at least as far as I'm aware, has his Skunkworks team that is working on another passion project, and he's been kicking it around for quite some time. I have no idea like where that is on the process. Like, that who knows? One day that game could get canceled. They'll be like, that game was in early development, even though it's been in development for years. They spent a lot of time on the prototyping phase at Respawn, so that's how that happens. But last I heard, that's still happening. So hopefully they can keep one of their passion projects at the very least. But it did sound like a lot of very excellent creative energy was going into this Star Wars first-person shooter, and it's insane that they are not seeing this one through. It's like, man, EA, you canceled all those other Star Wars games. You figured it out with Respawn, let them go do their thing, and it's like, nope, even that gets pulled out from underneath them. And it really is about they look at how much more money it's going to cost to complete that game, and they're worried about the profit margins. It really is. That's
all this is.
Yeah. We did the story on Game Us Mornings a few months ago, maybe last year sometime, where like talked about like what a company looks for when they greenlight a game, and it's about EA, these companies. It's about 15%. Obviously, the ideal is to have infinite profit margin for a game that just makes money forever and ever and ever.
Right.
But generally, when they're looking at a game like a single player first person shooter in the Star Wars genre, they want a profit margin of about 15%. And that becomes harder and harder to come by because of all the cuts that come from licensing a game. But so what? You started it. Let Respawn make it. This stinks.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we get back, a few more headlines. We'll talk about all that right after this. All right, we're back, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake dev Saber Interactive, although I would know them as the Mudrunner dev, escapes Embracer in a $500 million deal. This is from Wesley Yinpool at IGN by way of Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake developer Saber Interactive has reportedly left embattled parent company Embracer in a $500 million deal to become a privately owned company. Bloomberg reports the troubled Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake is still in the works, although question marks remain over whether it will ever come out. And just a reminder, when I heard that game was done, it was by way of like Sony. It's like Sony is pretty much done with that game. And then I heard quickly after saying that there are people at Saber who are still working on the project. What all of this means for that, I think I'm with Jason. Who knows if it ever actually comes out, but apparently someone is still working on the game over there. In November, Embracer CEO Lars Wingefors refused to answer a question about the KOTOR remake. Blah, blah, blah. This is part of a major restructuring at Embracer, this is where the industry's at, right? You ever been in a car with a driver that's like never coasts? They never like let off the gas. They only go, it's either gas or brake. That's what the industry's doing as a whole. And it's like, this is the most guilty company where Embracer's like, acquire, sell. And there was no period where it was just like, let's see what happens with all this stuff we acquired. It's nuts. They're also going to try to sell Gearbox. They are almost certainly going to find someone to sell Gearbox to. But hey, Saber Interactive is a talented studio with a lot of very they're very engineer focused. They're very good at ports. They did that impossible port of Witcher to the Switch. So they have the chops.
Crisis Remastered on Switch, which was nutty.
Yes,
getting like Svogi working on the Switch and everything, which is like ray tracing the light. Like that was wild.
It's wild, and it's a studio worth like preserving. And I'm glad that they are able to get out of this Embracer hole. I don't necessarily know what it means for them now to be privately owned in terms of, okay, are they going to find someone else to buy them, or are they going to be in major debt now that they're privately owned? There's some question marks surrounding that, but at the very least, I think they are better off now than they were being under Embracer, right?
Yeah, I mean, Embracer is just crumbling, which... Who could have seen this happening, Jeff? Who could have seen that when they were just gobbling up all these studios, and we're like,
only every single person that ever read a news story about Embracer. Yes.
Yeah, we're like, what are they doing over there? And as it turns out, they didn't know what they were doing over there. They had no plan. They just thought, well, magically, the money's going to come in, right? We're just going to buy all these companies. These companies that make money, we'll make the money. And then they had no plan for like managing them and everything like that. And what happens? The whole plan goes belly up.
Mm-hmm.
Shocker.
It's it is like one of the least surprising things that we ended up in this situation. We begged for Lars Wingefors to tell us what he was thinking all along. Never ever really said. Turned out it's because there was no plan. Here we are. I hope Saber's able to keep going. They literally have a game coming out this next month with Blood Runner Expeditions, and I hope that they get a chance to just support that game because that those games have a huge community. They could sell very well. I hope they're able to
I was going to ask, joking aside, I know, you're a sicko and you just absolutely love them, but how do they actually do?
They do very well. They're like one of those games that's like, they give like a decent amount of concurrence on Steam all the time. And there's like a huge community creation space on YouTube,
like one of those truck simulator things like Euro Truck, where it's like they secretly have a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly the case with this franchise. So I hope that they're able to like reap some of that reward, because it seems like Expeditions could be very good. At least I hope it is.
All right.
Insomniac calls this week's layoffs a solemn and unprecedented moment for the studio. This is from Tom Ivan at VGC. Insomniac Games has released a public statement in response to layoffs at the studio announced this week by parent company Sony Interactive Entertainment. PlayStation said on Tuesday that it plans to lay off 900 employees worldwide, or about 8% of its workforce. The move will include staff cuts at Spider-Man studio Insomniac and Last of Us developer Naughty Dog in the United States. PlayStation's London studio, meanwhile, being shut down. Like several other teams across SIE and PlayStation Studios, Insomniac Games was impacted by yesterday's layoffs. The company said in a message published to Twitter, "There are no sufficient words to express our feelings about it. This is a solemn and unprecedented moment for our studio. We are focusing our energy on helping everyone affected through this challenging time. For those who are hiring, there are great people seeking new roles who made important contributions to Insomniac's history. We're extremely grateful for them, and they will be missed." This is, on the heels of Spider-Man 2 selling a huge number of copies out of the gate, being one of the best-selling games of last year. And even they couldn't avoid this. We know that they are also the studio that has a number of massive games in the works, including, a standalone in Venom, Spider-Man 3, which they're planning to be over $300 million in terms of budget. Obviously, I think part of this is addressing that. We'll just have fewer people make that massive game. As if that's how that works. They're making the X-Men games. There will be multiple X-Men games. This is all out of the Insomniac leaks. This is a studio that is, a keystone for the PlayStation strategy. And yet they're like, hey, yeah, but we need you to do more with less. And I get when people see that, like, how does this not feel like something is crashing down here, right?
Yeah, like when a studio as we see them, at least, which I think we're not wrong in this, as successful as Insomniac, who has been propped up so much as kind of the reason to own a PS5 is the Insomniac games, the Spider-Mans, the Ratchet and Clanks that they're putting out and stuff like that. The fact that even they could be affected by something like this is just a sign of, again, to sound like a broken record, everything we've been talking about this episode, just the system being off and something being wrong here, and maybe poor judgment calls being made on all of this.
Yeah, it's and I've seen some tweets from people who work in Insomniac who have like been back in the office since this happened, and they're like, oh, now it's like hitting me, like looking around, how many people are gone, how many key people that were important to this studio are gone, and we talk about the brain drain of people who are carrying knowledge around leaving the industry. Well, a lot of them are being laid off, but you got to imagine if you're still, if you're getting that survivorship guilt, like that's got to feel terrible as well. Why wouldn't you maybe start looking around for something that is more sturdy and start leaving the industry after feeling this way, after putting out a game that conquered the world? You should not, you're like, wait, we did our part. We made a game that's incredible and sold. Why are we now feeling like we're getting punished? Which, how else do you read this other than a punishment? I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. Just, man, it's frustrating because, and we know how expensive like the Spider-Man IP is and everything like that. And so maybe the games just, aren't making the money that they're looking for and everything like that. But I mean, the people who are affected by this are not the ones ultimately making the shots in all this. So the fact that they're the ones who are getting slapped in the face and was like, hey, congrats, you did a great job. Kick rocks, hit the bricks. Like,
yep.
It feels messed up.
505 Games is closing offices in Germany, Spain, and France. This is from Tom Henderson at Insider Gaming. Just to clarify, this is referring to the actual physical offices. A new report has revealed that 505 Games will be closing its offices in Germany, Spain, and France. The news comes as part of the company's ongoing restructuring process that started last year. The report, which comes courtesy of Game Reactor, states that although several offices are closing, it's believed that the number of affected employees is around 10. So there are infected employees, obviously people who are like, they pay to maintain these offices. They probably weren't going to keep them aboard, but it seems like they're keeping most of the staff that make the games. Not that is somehow, that makes it better that 10 people are losing their jobs. This is something we're seeing a little bit more frequently as well. Some companies like thinking about, hey, we pay a lot in real estate costs, whether it's renting or however they acquire these actual physical locations. More and more studios are going remote, although we heard like Rockstar is like demanding people go back into the office this week, things like that.
Of course they would. Of
course they would, right? But it's like still many studios are, that new David Vonderhaar studio, the guy that was at Treyarch for a very long time, he started up a studio in Los Angeles, and then very quickly in the next sentence, they're like, and this is going to be a remote-based studio. And it's like, of course it is, because they're not going to pay Los Angeles game developer fees for a brand new studio across the board. And so when you start thinking in that way, you start thinking, hey, these studio and offices are maybe not necessarily worth it. So this will probably keep happening as well. This does, like, is this like a bad sign for the games industry? It's like not necessarily, but this does speak to like the sort of downward spiral that can happen. It's like, well, real estate, commercial real estate experiences a crash, and does that like seep over into other spaces? It's like, yeah, that's not the video gaming industry's responsibility, but there are exterior market forces that can still have drastic effects on gaming going forward, and this might be an early leading indicator that we're heading in that way. We'll see.
Yeah, and maybe I'm a bit biased here, but I think some companies can do some pretty cool stuff working primarily from home.
I think you might be onto something there. I agree. Remedy secures its connected universe by taking control of Control. This comes from Darren Bontheus at GameSpot. Remedy Entertainment has officially announced that it has acquired the full rights to the Control franchise from 505 Games. The new deal will give Remedy the full rights to Control, its upcoming sequel, and the multiplayer spin-off codenamed Condor, with all the publishing, distribution, marketing, and other rights licensed to 505 Games reverting back to the developer. As part of Remedy's long-term strategy to have more ownership over our business and the IPs we have created, we have gotten back all the rights for Control and the in-development Condor and Control 2. Remedy said. This is cool. I think they paid about $17 million, I believe is what the number was. The deal is valued at $18.4 million, I think they're saying. This is very cool. It seems like this is Remedy saying, hey, we believe in what we've made, and we are fully investing in the future of it. Alan Wake 2 did I think okay by some measures. Maybe people were expecting to do a little bit better. It was luck to Epic. I'm sure that had some effect. I think as far as Remedy's concerned, they're like, that was our fastest selling game. And they're like, I bet our next game is going to sell even faster. So why wouldn't we go all in and bet on ourselves? I think this is a good sign of like, hey, there are spaces in the industry where people are still like able to bet on themselves and maybe see that through. And hopefully we can get more of that, right?
Yeah, and I'm always a big fan of developers taking their IP back from a publisher where necessary, or just otherwise having full ownership over the creations that they make. Because then, like, you know, the headline says here, it just allows them to have better control over the things that they want to do, especially with the Remedy of connecting one game to another and having this whole, you know, this cinematic universe type thing going on. It's fun. It's very fun. And so this allows them to do that easier. And then also later down the line, you know, do re-releases or modifications or whatever better. Hey, that's a good thing, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Speaking of headlines, Jeff, what the hell's going on with like the overlays? Did you change that yet?
I do. Did something happen? New studies suggest kids are no experience of social pressure to game. Yeah, I did not. I'm not updating that, so I can just turn that off. Let's just do that.
Okay, yeah.
Let's do that. Sorry about that, everybody. That's got to be confusing. Jan is out today, so in case you're wondering why everything's broken, that's why.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Neil Druckmann doesn't think he has many large games left in him. This is from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. It seems like The Last of Us's game director Neil Druckmann is finding himself a bit long in the tooth. Talking recently on the Logically Speaking podcast with artist Logic, Druckmann revealed that he might not have a lot of games left in him. In the video, he says at around the 49-minute mark, I don't see myself doing this forever at this scale. It's a lot, and it takes a lot out of you. It's very stressful to manage that many people in multiple studios worldwide. I could see myself transitioning to something that's more low-key, that still allows me to have a creative outlet, but I've started thinking about how many more of these games I have in me, and it's not that many. Corey Barlog on Twitter said, big same for him as well, the God of War director. Of course they feel this way. Human beings were not meant to manage massive teams across multiple continents, many people whose faces you don't always see. Now, you know, we're talking about remote being good. Like, that's not what I'm saying there. I'm saying, like, you can only keep so many people in your head at one time. And when you have a team of 1,500 people, that begins to feel so removed from that. It's got to be hard not to disassociate in some ways. I bet that stress is real. And to have that stress stretching over 5 to 6 years, and now looking ahead at the promise of maybe that's going to start stretching to 6 to 7 years. Really, how many more times can you promise yourself you're going to be able to do that? Like, you're really going to commit yourself to doing that 3 more times? I'm going to start a new trilogy. That's going to be the next 25 years of your life? That's crazy. No, I don't blame these creators for feeling this way.
Bye, Neil. Anyway.
Corey, though. Come on. Corey's all right.
Corey, I care about. Corey's clearly an actual director that I really respect here, and would be sad to see him go. But
yeah, Neil Druckmann, get fucked. Yeah, for real.
Yeah, wait, I'm be real, Jeff. If he's in part of the reason why Naughty Dog's where they're at right now, later, dude.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I don't. Maybe it is. It's hard to be left. For me, it's like
we can't just put it at the feet of one person. I'm just joking around a little bit. But
sort of like because it was always like destined to start to get to this space of like, oh, we can make these games so big, and then you look around and like, oh my God, we are now in this situation. We can't look back. I don't know. It kind of feels like something that would be hard to control. But regardless,
definitely.
Yeah, fuck them. I bet a lot of creators, though, are feeling this way. Even people not named Neil Druckmann, where it is.
Yeah, it's just that and you mentioned this earlier, everyone's sort of just, not feeling amazing about gaming in general. So I'm sure anybody in any position, but especially those at the top who do legitimately have a decent amount of pressure put on them are probably like, man, I don't know how much more of this I want to do. I get it. I totally get it. And so, you know what? Sure, get out if you're not feeling it.
Yep. I mean, once again, speaks to the unsustainability that we reference constantly. Yeah. Yuzu devs responded. They didn't say much. Legally, they feel like they can't say much. But Steven Totillo points out that via their Discord, Yuzu is telling its concerned community, quote, "We do not know anything other than what's in the public filing, and we are not able to discuss the matter at this time."
Oh, so they do know about Shut the Fuck Up Friday. They can practice that, huh?
It took them a while to learn about it, but
Took
here we
them a
are.
while.
Yeah. If anything, the biggest lesson to come out of this is going to be you are not safe in your little Discord. Like you are, like the lawyers are there. They are in the building. Yeah, I mostly put this here to give you a chance because I know you follow this stuff a little bit, but when I look at like what's happening here, my hunch is this is not going to actually go to court, but Nintendo is prepared to go to court if they need to, and they feel like while they have struggled to have these fights work against emulators in the past, they think that they might have something with the current way that the DMCA works and functions that most judges will immediately glom onto. Like, yeah, that does seem like it is skirting up enough that we could say that this is violating the DMCA's, the rules about encryption. Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first of all, the big problem here with Yuzu is that, like, if people don't know what we're referencing, they said too much in several different places, including in their Discord. Like,
yes,
they kind of got cocky. Maybe I've seen certain messages flowing around and stuff like that where I'm like, yo, you can't say that. This is a public Discord. This isn't, even if it was locked down, like someone would find this.
We all get the wink and the nod that people do when they're like, and you can't use pirated ROMs. You got to use your backups. Like when you buy like a device and it says something like the stuff that like Analog Pocket. Like they're always like, hey, no, you got to use some real cartridges with this. And then they eventually put out something, but it's like you got to use your backups to use this special firmware that's going to enable you to use pirated stuff. But they do the wink and the nod, and nowhere in their official materials does it suggest that you should be using pirated stuff. And if it does, it says don't do that. And there's a reason. It's specifically to avoid this situation that Yuzu finds itself in.
Yeah, but then you can't say in whispers, actually, here's where you get the goods. Like, you can't do anything even remotely like that.
I mean, and we see this from other emulators where they're like, man, we're just not, don't ask where the BIOS is. We're not going to tell you. You have Google. Go fucking find it.
They'll literally tell you, like, you use your search engine to figure it out. Exactly, because they don't want to touch that. And this thing was always risky because first of all, emulators are good. Everyone listening,
emulators are great.
I want
Nintendo
you to know,
will tell you that if you were to ask them about them selling video games that use emulators.
Exactly. When they use emulators, it's good stuff. When someone else uses an emulator, it's a piece of software that allows people to use illegally pirated software. Oh, fuck off, Nintendo. But the thing about emulators are, first of all, this is preservation. Like, video games are preserved through DRM-free copies of PC games and emulation of console games. The problem with this is that they have an emulator that can play commercially ready, like, available games. You can go into a store, you can buy a Switch game, and then that can be played on Yuzu. Here's the thing, though. Let's be real with ourselves. Most people aren't doing that.
Absolutely.
Most people are pirating software using on Yuzu. Listen, that's on them. That's not on the emulator people. But what that means is that if that's how most people are going to use your emulator, you can't say a single goddamn word about that. You just have to be like, this is an educational thing. This is a preservation thing. Someday in the future, our software will be very helpful for you playing these games after your hardware breaks down, your legally acquired software. Just shut the hell up about it otherwise. And that's how retro emulators get away with it, and why Nintendo won't go after just like a random Super Nintendo emulator. Why? Because they're not specifically in the business of selling you an individual game that you might go on a ROM site and acquire. And guess what? You can't buy that in any way, shape, or form legally without just giving money to someone else. So they know that, so they don't care. It's only when it's like they have a smoking gun, they have the gotcha where they can be like, oh no, you messed up, we're gonna shut you down right now. Or in a case like this, where your software is just, let's be real, is being used to circumvent just the system, just buying your frigging games. So,
and the fact that like Nintendo was able to get like they call it like telemetry data. I didn't look into like what this was, but they're like, no, Yuzu just straight up said the most played game was Tears of the Kingdom. It's like, so they're keeping track of it and they know how it's being used and they're kind of touting that. And
they even talk about on like Twitter. I follow their Twitter account. They say way too much on Twitter, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a case of they really did not abide Shut the Fuck Up Friday, and they are paying. They're going to pay for it. And, this does not mean that they are 100% guaranteed guilty of something. This will have to be heard out, and the judge will have to determine what side of the line this falls onto. But very easily it could fall onto this is a violation of DMCA, even if it is just like, I said this yesterday, like, oh, freedom of speech. We're just telling people, like, you could try to argue that the DMCA is those could be like, well, that's not what we're talking about here. If you are facilitating people to violate the copyright, you're gonna get smacked down a little bit. So,
yeah,
we'll see. They probably just pull Yuzu off of like their website and just like make it go on like it exists in torrents going forward and stuff like that. And they
maybe Yuzu just stops for now.
Right. Least. There's a little bit more friction between people and getting stuff running, and that's Nintendo will be like, okay, we'll accept that.
If only there were another Switch emulator around.
Anyways, you shut the fuck up. Sega appoints ex-Disney executive as head of transmedia. This is from Dean Takahashi over at GamesBeat. Sega announced it has appointed Justin Scarpone, a former executive at Disney and Scopely, as head of its transmedia efforts. He will be executive vice president and head of Global Transmedia Group effective April 1st, 2024. The establishment of a global transmedia group will allow the company to advance its transmedia strategy across its wide portfolio of intellectual property such as Persona, Like a Dragon, Angry Birds, and more in the coming years, the company said. Listen, I get you had some success with Sonic. There's a lot of thirst in Hollywood for video game IP to take chances on with new movies. So getting someone to facilitate that and make sure that Sega gets the best deal with all those things is good. Sega is definitely a company that feels like it is up and down a lot. I definitely hearing that it's still having a lot of struggles coming off of last year. That could manifest as maybe more layoffs. We'll see. Hopefully not. They clearly just had some good games with Persona and Like a Dragon that sold very well. Maybe that stymies some of that. But them finding other ways to make revenue from IP that like Sonic, the good thing with Sonic is, hey, that the last Sonic game didn't do very well for whatever reason. I think it's because it's not very exciting. It wasn't great.
Superstars. I was like, what do you mean? Frontiers did okay. Oh, yeah, right. Superstars exist.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And so when a game like comes out and sort of is just like this nothingness fart that comes out and people ignore it. Well, listen, Sonic is bigger than the video games now, and they are able to capitalize on that. And that's where they kind of want to get with some of these other IP as well. And really, ideally, you're in a situation where it's like, well, every Persona game is selling better than the last Persona game. And now there's a ton of cool Persona media that people can engage with and get even more excited about it. And that gets them buying even more games. That's the ideal scenario. But even having a fallback where it's like, maybe the games aren't doing as well. I'm not saying Persona, just, some other game. Well, there's still power to the IP and we can make money from it in other ways. This seems like a good safety net that all of these companies are looking to have. And I think for Sega, it makes some sense.
Yeah, I think they have the IPs to go for it. And as discussed here, there's obvious ways to do this. Just make more Persona anime, make a, Like a Dragon drama or whatever, make an Angry Birds kids show or whatever, there's easy ways to do this. So I think ultimately, people bristle at the term transmedia and stuff like that. Like, oh no, what sort of like crappy Netflix thing are we gonna get now? But I think this could be good. Like, I think Sega has the portfolio back up. What I want to know, Jeff, is I think Scarpone is Italian.
I'm going to say Scarpone's Italian. Yes.
Okay.
And we could tell
you never know, Ryan.
It's impossible to know. It's definitely impossible. Ask our friend Dan Reichert. All right. That does it for the news. I got a poll question. I'm going to get to that here in a second. But before I do that, Shawn, tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have going on. Then we'll get to all the Giant Bomb stuff as well.
Sure, yeah, you can find me on twitter.com as TurboShawn_. You can find me as just TurboShawn, SHAWN, everywhere else. And of course, I'm doing stuff here. Today, I'm filling in for Jan. So if you're watching a Giant Bomb show or listening to it later, hey, hi, I did that. So I hope you like it. Jeff, I know today was a bit of a bummer. So I got something for you and everyone.
Yeah, please.
Else, okay?
I welcome it.
Everybody listening to this, watching this right now, listening later, do me a favor. Okay, open up a new window or a new tab. Don't close the stream. We'll know.
Yes, I will.
Open up a new window or a new tab. Okay. Go to google.com and type in Chocobo. CHOCOBO.
I expect this to be completely reasonable. I've done it.
You should see a little button at the bottom.
Oh, I do.
Give that a few clicks. Maybe give it a lot of clicks.
Ah! Whoa! Okay, hang on. Let's do this on stream. Okay. There we go.
Yeah, let the people see. Let the people see what's going on here. It is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth launch day, everyone. So Square Enix cooked up a little something. You know, some of these Google Doodles are pretty cute. I like this one, of course.
Let's see if I can get this framed up for everybody appropriately. From browser, there we go. Nope. Oh, there it is. All right, there's the button. There's the button, everybody. All right, I'm going to click it.
Yeah, click that button. Click that button.
There they come. Holy crap.
That's a lot of chocobos.
That's so many chocobos. I did just introduce my my kid. She was playing Tears of the Kingdom. And I'm like, hey, go cut that chicken. Go hit that chicken with a sword. And she was like, no. So I did it. And then I got attacked, and she was just losing her mind. It was the best thing she had ever seen.
Well, hey, she's like, that's why you don't attack the chicken.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, lesson learned. But I'm like, this happens in every Zelda game. And she's like, all right, well, I got to look into that. So pretty cool. All right. Let's see. Here we are. The poll question. The aforementioned poll question. Have you used Yuzu to play commercial games? I asked this yesterday here on Game Mess Mornings. 10% say yes. 41% say no. You're probably wondering, hey, where's the other 49%? And they said, what are you, a cop?
What are you, a cop? Shut the fuck
up. Hey, 1 in 10, though, just straight up like very honest people. Or just don't give a hell.
Yeah, 1 in 10 people are in that Discord.
Yeah. 1 in 10 people are going to get Yuzu in trouble with Nintendo and the law. Yeah, hey, I Yuzu is definitely the kind of thing where it's like a lot more people are using it than maybe you realize, and yet it's still not like everywhere. It's not like clearly because 20 million people still bought Tears of the Kingdom. So
right.
Yeah. All right, new poll question. What did I say I was going to ask? Oh, yes, that's right. In general, are you losing interest in video games? No, I still enjoy gaming as much as ever, or yes, I'm spending more time and money on other hobbies. So the negative there says that you do still care about video games. Just like, I want to just gauge us. Obviously, I think people listening to the show are going to mostly be like, hey, no, I'm still into games. But just like search your soul a little bit. Let's talk about this. Let's see if anyone's like looking around like, hey, I'm primarily a PlayStation player. And they said they weren't going to have any games in the franchises I love for the next fiscal year. Well, yeah, that Final Fantasy game's coming out. So I bet you still have something to look forward to. So
if you're looking for other hobbies, the Pokemon trading card game is bigger than ever, and we got a new game.
You are not allowed to use this platform for your evilness. All right, what do we have happening on Giant Bomb? I'm probably going to try to play some RZ. I got to move this around since we got a little bit less time before now in Voicemail Dump Truck, but I have enough time to get in there and play some of it. Maybe won't finish it like I thought I might, but we'll see. I'll make that happen. I'm going to go upstairs, feed the kid, and then we'll check on that. Other than that, Voicemail Dump Truck will happen later today. We're going to have Ben Hansen and Haley from MinMax. They're going to be coming on the show. It's going to be a good time. Tomorrow, UPF will happen. I am going to start Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Not from the very beginning, but from where the demo ends, because everyone can play the demo, right? Listen, if you think I should play from the very beginning, I will.
Have you played that section yet?
No.
Well, then you need to play it.
Well, I was going to do it. I was going to do it tonight, and then I started on because this is what Mike said.
No. We got to see your reaction to certain things.
Okay, fantastic. All right, great. Then I will play it from the very beginning. So look out for that. Anything else? Oh, no BCR this week, mostly because Jan's out, but also I'll spend a little bit extra time playing that Final Fantasy VII content tomorrow. So
we're handcuffing him to the chair. He's not leaving.
Right, so everyone can get a good look at that, maybe during your work day. All right. You're right. Never listen to Mike. Mike's so sure of like when he like has an idea, it's like, this is what the chat wants. And it's like, maybe not. I mean, Mike's always right. Shit, he's right there. Damn it. Shawn, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games. I really appreciate it, man.
Anytime, Jeff. Always a pleasure. Come on.
Thank you all for listening. You're the best audience in gaming. We'll get through all of this together, everybody. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.